Many thanks for joining me on Global News and Zuma, Nigeria. My name is Lois Tureki, and we begin with U.S. secret war remembered as Lloyd Austin visits Laos. U.S. Senate rejects bid to block weapons aid to Israel. U.S. House panel holds back report on Trump AG nominee guides. Australia proposes bill to restrict under-16s on social media. And United Nations says over 150 killed in Haiti's Port-au-Prince this week. Stay with me for these and more stories. The family of United States Air Force Sergeant David S. Price finally buried him in August after over 50 years of waiting. The 26-year-old was stationed at a top-secret CIA base, Lima Site 85, on a mountain top in northeast Laos when he was overturned by Lao and Vietnamese Communist forces in March 1968. Price was among 13 U.S. personnel along with 42 Thai and ethnic Hmong soldiers who were murdered at the CIA radar station that was used to guide U.S. bomber planes in the attacks on Laos and neighboring Vietnam during the Vietnam War. It took decades to find and identify Price's remains extensively because U.S. warplanes were given orders to destroy the CIA site to cover up its work, part of a broader effort to obscure the secret war Washington illegally waged in Laos, an officially neutral country, in the 1960s and 1970s. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the commencement of a significant strand in the U.S.'s secret war, Operation Barrel Roll, a 9-year U.S. bombing campaign that will see Laos becoming the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. Lloyd Austin, U.S. Secretary of State Defense, is in the Laotian capital Vientiane this week, becoming Washington's first ever defense secretary to visit Laos. Austin is attending the Association of Southeast Asian Nations ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting plus on Thursday as part of a regional tour which has already included stops in Australia, the Philippines and Fiji after Laos. The Defense Secretary's visit comes against a backdrop of escalating strategic rivalry in the Asia-Pacific region, with Southeast Asian defense chiefs looking for security assurances amid increasing maritime disputes with China in the South China Sea and uncertainty in advance of January's return of President-elect Donald Trump. Not on Austin's official agenda, however, is a remembrance of Operation Barrel Roll and the beginning of the darkest chapter in Laos's modern history. Still sticking with the United States Senate has rejected a bill that targeted to block a U.S. weapons sale to Israel amid the country's war in Gaza, an outcome that right-of advocates say does not take away from a rising push to condition support to Washington's top ally. A resolution to stop the sale of tank rounds failed to advance a 79-18 vote on Wednesday, with key progressives and mainstream Democratic senators supporting the effort. Two more resolutions to suspend the sale of other weapons also failed after winning fewer than 20 votes. Senator Bernie Sanders introduced the so-called joint resolutions of disapproval in September to oppose a $20 billion weapons deal approved by the administration of President Joe Biden. It was the first time ever that a weapons sale to Israel was subjected to such a vote. While support for the push may appear minimal, it represents a crack in the bipartisan consensus over unconditional U.S. aid to Israel. The vote is an inflection point in the decades-long effort to restrict Washington's military aid to Israel. Beth Miller, political director at the U.S.-based advocacy group Jewish Voice for Peace, said. In addition to Sanders, Senators Peter Welch, Jeff Merkley, Chris Van Hollen, Tim Kaine and Brian Scars backed the resolution to block offensive munitions to Israel. While Sanders is a progressive independent who caucuses with Democrats, some of the lawmakers who backed the effort come from the mainstream wing of the party. Kaine was the Democratic Party's vice presidential nominee in the 2016 elections that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton lost to incoming Republican President Donald Trump. In a statement announcing his vote earlier on Wednesday, Kaine called for work towards de-escalation and a sustainable peace in the region. Ongoing U.S. backing of Israel has been key for funding the war in Gaza and Lebanon. A recent Brown University study found that Biden administration spent $17.9 billion on security aid to Israel over the past year, despite cautions of United Nations experts that a U.S. ally is committing genocide in Gaza. That assistance has continued despite escalating Israeli authorities, including extensive destruction in Lebanon, sexual abuse of Palestinian prisoners, and the suffocating siege in Gaza that has starved the territory. Still in the U.S., a congressional ethics panel that probed allegations of illegal conduct by Matt Gaetz, United States President-elect Donald Trump's choice for Attorney General AG, has divided without releasing its report on the former congressman. Gaetz was the subject of a long-running investigation by the United States House Committee on Ethics, which policies lawmakers conduct. The panel's inquiries, launched in 2021, probed many instances of alleged illegal activity involving Gaetz, an ex-lawmaker from Florida, including the sex trafficking of a 17-year-old, drug use, misappropriating campaign funds, and other illicit activities. Last year, the U.S. Department of Justice closed an investigation into sex trafficking allegations against Gaetz without filing criminal charges. He was first elected to the House of Representatives in 2016 and won re-election this month, but the 42-year-old resigned shortly after Trump named him as his choice for Attorney General in November 13th. His resignation came just days before the ethics panel was set to vote on whether to release its report, forming uncertainty over its fate given that Gaetz is no longer a member of Congress. After a roughly 2-hour closed-door meeting on Wednesday, the 10-member panel, which is evenly split between Republicans and Democrats, departed without reaching a decision. There is not an agreement by the committee to release the report, Republican Chairman Michael Guest said, according to reports following the meeting. While the committee members voted along party lines, elected officials from both parties have called for the report to at least be shared with the U.S. Senate, which votes on cabinet nominations as they set to consider whether to confirm Gaetz as Attorney General. Some Republicans have argued against releasing the report, including House Speaker Mike Johnson, who said making it public will set a terrible precedent. Senator Dick Durbin, the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, on Wednesday released a public letter addressed to FBI Director Christopher Wray demanding access to the files relating to the alleged sex trafficking of minors. Gaetz has continued to deny wrongdoing and tagged the investigations politically motivated. Away from the United States now to Australia, the Australian government is threatening multi-million-dollar fines for social media companies that breach a proposed ban on children under 16 from using their service. On Thursday, Michelle Rowland, Communications Minister, introduced an amendment to the Online Safety Act in Parliament, which the government has pitched as leading social media reform. The Albanese government is introducing leading legislation to establish 16 as the minimum age for access to social media, Rowland said in a statement. This reform is about protecting young people and letting parents know we've got their backs, she added. The legislation includes financial penalties of up to 50 million Australian dollars, that's $32.5 million US dollars, for companies found not to have taken reasonable steps to prevent age-restricted users having accounts. The ban is anticipated to apply to social media services including TikTok, X, Instagram and Snapchat, though a list of banned services has not been released. The legislation has bipartisan backing and if passed will come into effect in 1 year. The legislation places the onus on social media platforms, not parents or children, to ensure protections are in place, according to Rowland. Ultimately, this is about supporting a safer and healthier online environment for young Australians. The legislation follows many high-profile cases of children taking their own lives, citing online bullying and complaints from parents about the pressure their children face to be online. Numerous parents and pro-ban campaigners have hailed the bill as a long-overdue step to enforce accountability on tech companies for tools Australian children use online. Critics, however, say the proposed bar is a blunt instrument that will lessen teens' access to support networks and create greater risks for those who flout the ban. Both sides agree about the risks of children spending too much time online and the need for tech companies to do more to safeguard their products. The Australian government also commissioned the UK consortium Age Check Certification Scheme to trial age verification technology to aid efforts to keep children off social media platforms. and it's proposed a digital duty of care on providers to keep users safe and help prevent online harms. Similar agreements have been introduced elsewhere that allow users to complain and for authorities to take action. Meanwhile, over the past week, no less than 150 people have been killed in Port-au-Prince, the United Nations says, as the Haitian capital reels from a rise in gang violence. The United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, in a statement on Wednesday, said over half of the deaths, at least 55%, came from exchanges of fire between gang members and the police. Another 92 people were wounded in the violence, and closely 20,000 others have been forcibly displaced from their homes. Volker Turk, the High Commissioner, said in a statement, Port-au-Prince's estimated 4 million people are practically being held hostage as gangs now control all the main roads in and out of the capital. Haiti has spun from years of violence as powerful armed groups, often with relations to the country's political and business leaders, have competed for influence and control of territory. But the decision deteriorated dramatically after the July 2021 assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse, which formed a power vacuum. Earlier this year, the gangs launched attacks on prisons and other state institutions across Port-au-Prince, triggering a renewed political crunch. The campaign of violence led to the resignation of Haiti's unelected prime minister, the formation of a transitional presidential council, and the deployment of a United Nations-backed multinational police mission. That Kenya-led police force, officially known as the Multinational Security Support Mission (MSS), has failed to take control back from the gangs. However, only a fraction of the planned contingent has arrived in Haiti so far, while the United States, the MSS's major backer, has been pushing to get more funding and personnel to bolster the force. The U.S. has also been pushing to transform the mission into a United Nations peacekeeping force, a proposal that has the backing of Haitian leaders but is opposed by veto holding United Nations Security Council members China and Russia. Nairobi strongly supports that push, Monica Juma, a national security advisor to the Kenyan presidency, said during a special United Nations Security Council session on Haiti on Wednesday afternoon. Juma said that MSS presently counts 416 boots on the ground from Belize, Bahamas, Jamaica and Kenya, but that is too few for the task ahead. In African scenes and on more stories, Mali, civilian prime minister ousted for criticizing junta, cabinet dissolved. On Wednesday, Mali's prime minister, Choguel Maiga, as a decree was read on national television by the Secretary General of the presidency, Olufensei Diawara, read the 3-article text signed by the president of the transition, General Assimi Goïta. Appointed by the military in 2021 following Mali's second coup in a year, Prime Minister Choguel Kokola Maiga publicly criticized the junta on November 16th during events marking the November 2023 recapture of Kidal. Dressed in a military attire despite being a civilian, Maiga voiced frustration over his exemption from major decisions, particularly regarding the timeline for the nation's political transition. Demonstrators in the capital and several cities in the country called for Maiga's resignation. A section of the Malian military known as the Collective of Military Defense (CDM) is accusing Prime Minister Choguel Kokola Maiga of treason and denunciation following his criticism of the ruling generals. We take a breather now, and when we come back, I'll bring you stories from Nigeria. Please don't go anywhere. You're welcome back, and now stories from Nigeria. We begin with ACF to educate northerners on self-defense amid insecurity. The Arewa Consultative Forum, ACF, has said there is a need for public consciousness to educate the people on the significance of self-defense in the north due to the prevalent insecurity. On Wednesday, while speaking in his opening remarks at the ACF National Executive Committee meeting, the ACF chairman Mamba Mike Osman San stressed the dire need for collective action to tackle the deteriorating situation. The chairman emphasized the alarming rate of attacks, kidnappings and killings in the region, highlighting that these incidents had become too common. He stressed that the North's security challenges are not only a regional concern, but also a national issue that needs speedy attention. Osman cautioned that the deteriorating insecurity served as a clarion call to action, saying it is imperative for leaders, stakeholders and citizens to come together to address the region's challenges and ensure a safer, more prosperous future for all. The ACF chairman also praised the formation of the Shekarau-led League of Northern Democrats organized by an elder statesman, Dr. Umar Ardo, which was recently launched in a meeting attended by major northern elite in Abuja. Still on the news, Tinubu to appoint envoys as ministry post-consular. The federal government has started deploying consular officers to diplomatic missions worldwide before the expected release of the ambassadorial list. The step comes 14 months after 83 ambassadors were recalled in September 2023 following President Bola Tinubu's inauguration. A review of foreign policy led to the recall of the 83 ambassadors, both career and non-career, from their post in September 2023, but the subsequent appointment of replacements has yet to take place. The envoys were asked to return to Nigeria by October 31st, 2023, marking a shift in diplomatic strategy and suggesting that the government was looking to realign its foreign engagements to better serve national interests. Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, had said the ambassadors served at the president's request in their host nations and that it was the president's prerogative to send or recall them from any country, adding that it was part of a strategy to realign Nigeria's foreign engagements. The recall was done, but it left a diplomatic void as no replacements have been announced ever since. The stall in appointing successors, however, has raised concerns. The government appointed 12 consuls general and 5 chargé d'affaires to represent Nigeria in 14 countries in April 2024, but these interim measures fell short of filling the leadership vacuum in major missions. Consuls general and chargé d'affaires can handle routine administrative duties and oversee the day-to-day operations of an embassy, but they do not possess the authority or diplomatic weights engaged at the highest levels, such as with heads of state or critical international negotiations. The Foreign Affairs Minister on May 28th acknowledged the situation, citing a lack of funds as the primary reason for the delay in appointing new ambassadors. A few days later, former Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Ambassador Eche Ubuede said any fresh ambassadorial appointments will rely on budget allocations. And finally on the news, Senate removes Danladi Umar as CCT chairman. The Senate has announced the removal of Danladi Umar as the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal CCT following a closed-door meeting held during plenary on Wednesday. According to report, the removal of Danladi Umar followed the 2/3 majority of senators needed to validate the resolution of the legislative chamber. Okpeyemi Bamidele, the Senate leader, had sponsored a motion seeking the invocation of the provision of Section 157, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999, as amended, for the removal of the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, CCT. Bamidele presented reasons for his removal, saying, and I quote, "Senate has been inundated with series of petitions and allegations of corrupt stroke misconduct against the chairman, a situation that necessitated the ninth Senate, through the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct and Public Petitions, to invite him to series of investigative hearings." The motion also claimed Umar's absenteeism from office for over 1 month without permission and without requesting his position. The lawmaker said those were the disturbing issues alongside others that precipitated President Bola Tinubu to have forwarded the name of Abdullahi Usman Bello as his replacement. After the presentation and debate by some senators, Senate President Godswill Akpabio put the motion to vote, and 74 senators voted for the removal of Danladi Umar, while 10 kicked against it. It was ruled that the chairman should be removed, while Akpabio told the clerk to the Senate to communicate the resolution to the presidency in accordance with the law. A recap of major stories says U.S. secret war remembered as Lloyd Austin visits Laos. U.S. Senate rejects bid to block weapons aid to Israel. U.S. House panel holds back report on Trump Attorney General nominee guides. Australia proposes bill to restrict under-16s on social media. And United Nations says over 150 killed in Haiti's Port-au-Prince this week alone. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Tureki. Bye for now.